problem with is exactly that. If you go to a person and you attack their religion, and it doesn't have to just be religion. When we see these statements, I want us to think, of course, specifically about what the person's talking about, but also a broader application beyond that. So you can think about almost anything. You can think about religion here, and I would suggest to you that everybody has a religion, whether you're worshiping gods or not, whether you're worshiping politics. There's something that everybody kind of worships because we're hardwired to do that. In his case, it may be logic, as someone suggested. He's a neuroscientist, so you kind of rely always back onto that one thing. Can science answer everything? Well, of course not. If it could, there wouldn't be philosophy. The fact that he's a philosopher and a neuroscientist is almost, I don't want to say it's contradictory because it's not, but it suggests a mind that's able to do this to itself, to kind of push back against itself and discover things. Because he can go by logic, he can go by the scientific method, but he's also open-minded to the idea that there's more to it than just that. I can tell you from his personality, he is shut off to the idea of religion. He's written many books about it, and he argues that religion doesn't just, he argues that religion is not just untrue, that it actually makes the world a worse place. It makes the world a worse place. How could it do that, from his perspective? Yeah.
A bunch of people fighting about it. Seems right.
Yeah.
Sure.
What's that?
Separates people into different groups.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, especially by when we apply it. So it causes a lot of conflict, of course, because we disagree about the gods, and then it also kind of segments us out so that, oh, you believe in that God, you believe in that God, and it creates a system such that it becomes very, what's what I'm thinking of? I want to say divisive, because divisive isn't necessarily a bad thing. Adversarial. We become adversarial. So my God is better than your God. My God can beat up your God. And isn't it funny that the gods themselves never appear to fight it out? But the people who believe in them do. We roll up with our stuff to prove it. Faith. So what's a difference between faith and hope, or are they the same thing?
I feel like faith has more to do with God and hope has more to do with
Belief.
Yeah.
Which one's more belief?
Faith.
Faith is more about belief?
I think so.
I feel like faith is you put your belief in something.
Ah, okay. So then faith is, misspelled belief. So maybe faith is like you put belief in something, in some object, or some person, or whatever. And what's hope then?
Something like inside of you.
My liver?
How do I explain it?
My liver? My kidneys?
I feel like the difference between faith and hope would be like faith would be belief in God, and hope would be belief in like yourself.
So hope is a belief.
Mm-hmm.
So if I say, I hope.
Maybe like a yearn or something. I don't necessarily think it's belief.
Maybe it's a yearning. So if I say, I really hope I pass this test, do I believe, is there a belief in myself I'm going to pass this test? So then maybe it's more something like this, a yearning. Oh, I really hope, like fingers crossed and toes crossed and everything. Okay. So faith is something that you place, it's almost like external. Yeah, it's something external to yourself. You put it in something else. And hope is almost like a reflection of a desire that a person has. So I hope that I'm going to pass this test. I hope that this is going to work out. I hope. Okay. And so if so, that's a really interesting thing, because then that means that you can have faith and hope in a religion. Because you can have a belief that it's true, and you can also have a real deep yearning for it to be true as well. Like if you're a Christian and you believe in the rapture is this idea that at some point God's going to show up, and everybody who's one of his followers here is going to be taken up, and you're just going to like disappear. You'll be gone. And the world will be full of only people who don't believe. And I know Christians who believe this, and they have a faith that it's true, and then they also have a yearning. In other words, like they wake up almost every day hoping that today is the day that they're going to be raptured. So there's a hope for it as well, a yearning. What's that?
I see a lot of TikTok about it, and like they say so many different years and dates.
Yeah, the years and the dates are interesting when you see things like that. Yeah, I mean, there are whole religions founded on the idea that we can predict when that's going to happen. And yet it never has, and yet people will still follow it. There are people like legit, they'll sit there and say, it's happening August 3rd, 2022 at 11:58 a.m. How do you get that? Well, if you take the Bible and you set, it's like, oh my, I don't know, man, like, do you believe in it? Yeah, I believe it. Well, but Jesus says that no one knows the day or the hour, not even the Son of Man. So if he doesn't, Jesus himself saying, I don't know what's going to happen. So if he doesn't know, how do you think you can figure it out? You have faith or not? And so then you start to wonder if the faith is in something else or if the faith is in themselves. You know, I cracked some kind of a code. And then of course what happens when you're part of that group and that person's leading you that way and then it doesn't happen. You're sitting there and you're just like, and then like 11:59 happens, tick, and you're like, what the hell happened? I mean, what the heck happened in that case? You know, we're still here. Man, I called out for this. I didn't go to work for this. Sorry. There's a, this part will not make it into YouTube. When you watch this and it's fast forwarded over, you'll see why. By the way, I fast forward over stuff on YouTube sometimes because I'm trying to keep the videos under 20 minutes. So when you see it, you know, that's why. If any of you want to copy like the whole video, just let me know. I can email you the whole thing unedited. But that's why if you ever do watch them on YouTube, it's like some fast forwarded chunks. Because it'll just be something like we're repeating something over and over or whatever. But you guys remember way back ago that the world was supposed to end?
2012.
Yeah, 2012.
Like
Mayan calendar.
Yeah.
It was so funny. Sorry, but yeah, so the 2012. You know, people had a lot of faith that that was going to happen, and then it didn't. And it was interesting because does anybody know why? Everyone thought the world, no, I'm sorry, not everyone, it's a stupid thing to say. Do you know why some people thought the world was going to end on that day?
For the Mayan calendar.
Yeah, but what about the Mayan calendar?
Yeah, and
Stop. The ending, yeah, just stop. And they thought, oh, that must mean it's the end of the world. Do you know that there are still Mayans alive today? Yeah, they're in southern Mexico. So people went to them and asked them, why does the calendar stop? And they said, because they don't view time the same way that we view it in the West. So a lot of cultures around, so there are two ways of seeing time. One is to see it what's called teleologically. Teleologically means that there's a beginning, there's a middle, and then there's an end point. So that means that time is doing this, from beginning to end. And when you look at, for example, like Christian religion, Islamic religion, most of the religions that we follow in the West, they're teleological like this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then at the end, you've got some kind of an apocalypse where the world is going to end. God's going to pour out his judgment, and then after that, all the believers go to heaven, and then that's a wrap. But a lot of religions around the, well, actually, cultures around the world, they view time like this instead. It's circular. It's not circular. Sorry. It's what do you call it?
Repeating?
Yeah. It's like birth and renewal, birth and renewal, birth and renewal. So think of it, I mean, there's a certain sense that we imagine that in our culture as well, in a limited sense. So you've got, let's see, when does the year begin? What season do we associate with beginnings? Spring, yeah, springtime. Everything is new and it's fresh. And then after springtime we have summer, yeah. And then after summer, of course, we have fall. Or if you want to sound sophisticated, you can say autumn. And then after autumn, fall, we have winter. Very good. All right. Now, what's interesting is if you look at this not just as seasonal, where like you have like birth, you know, flourishing, then life slows down, and then everything kind of hibernates, and then everything is renewed. You can also look at your life like this as well. So you have springtime of your life when everything is brand new and fresh. That's from when you're born until, no, I'll ask you what age that's going to be. This is the time when you're kind of learning about how life works, you're learning about how to interact with people, you're going to the beach for the first time and you're still excited. What what age would you say this is? The springtime. From like 0 when you're born until when? 6, 7? We'll make it 7 just so we can expand a little bit more. Okay. And then you've got the summer of your life, which is the part of your life where you're full of passion and excitement and energy. You think of it like just think of it like summertime. Summertime we associate with being excited and free and all that. And so I guess that would have to start at age 8. And when does that time of your life end?
12.
Age 12? God damn. 18? Jeez. 21?
27.
17? Don't say 27. And by the way, the dates themselves, so the ages themselves aren't important. It's the concept I want you guys to get. So then, your life is full of excitement. Now it starts to slow down. The leaves fall off the trees, I guess you could say.
27, 28.
It's like 28. I'm sorry, 28. And when did that end?
To 60.
When you're 60. Wow, that's a big age there.
I was going to say 50.
50. So then you've got 50 or 61, let's say, until death. And that's the winter of your life. That's when everything is kind of slowing down. It gives you an opportunity to look back and reflect. So you can think of, so whenever you see seasons reflected in like stories, you can understand them that they symbolize these times of our lives. The spring of our life, the summertime of our lives, the fall of our lives, and eventually the winter time of our lives. And so that being the case, then you can see where it makes sense that a lot of cultures kind of grab onto this idea that life is just kind of circular. Because when you get into the winter of your life, what's happening somewhere else? Somewhere else somebody is being born. Yeah? There's this great song by a band called Live. They're an old band from like the 90s. I think they were still around the early 2000s too. They have a song called Lightning Crashes. And the song is essentially about a woman who's in the hospital and she's dying. And as she's dying, down the hallway there's a woman who's giving birth. And so it talks about this like cycle of life where you're dying and think about that. You're about to take your last breaths and just across the hallway you hear someone taking their first ones as they're crying. That's a pretty intense thing if you understand life to be like this, these circles, Unfortunately, some people never quite get past the summer, as we mentioned before. Some people die in the fall of their lives, and some people get to their winter way too early. In other words, there's a proper time for all these things, but I know people who get to the winter of their lives when they're in their 30s, almost, because they kind of accept themselves. They settle into a pattern of life. And a failure in life is failure in life is to form habits. Because when you form habits, you start to lose life, if that makes sense to you. So for example, any of you guys walk to school the same way every day? Or you drive to school the same way every day? And so if I asked you, hey, when you were halfway to school today, what did you see? A lot of us have difficulty remembering because the alarm goes off, and everything from the alarm going off until whatever is just autopilot. Like you wake up and you're in such a routine that you don't even notice the things that are going on around us. I think it was in this class last time I was saying that when you see like a bush of flowers, you don't see the flowers themselves, you see memory of the flowers. That was this class, right? No? So this is the way that your memory works. There are things that you walk past every day. So for example, you see that bush outside. If any had the windows open today, if as you guys look at that and you study it, the next time you guys come in here, as you walk past it, you'll see it in your peripheral, but you're not going to see the object as it really is. What happens is your brain actually accesses a memory of that bush. So your brain remembers it's there, and your brain will access a memory of that bush, and then it kind of fills in the gap of your observations. If you come in tomorrow and you stop and you study it again, then your mind gets updated with that new memory. And that's how we see a lot of the world around us. We don't see the objects as they are right now on August 3rd, 2022. We see the object as it was on July 26th, 2022. Or whenever it was the last time you saw it. So when you walk out of your house, if there's like a flower bush outside that you see, you're seeing a memory of that thing, not the thing itself. If this makes sense. So now a lot of things in your life are like that too. Here's a trip for you. You generally come to school the same time every day, right? And you generally come on the same path, right? So do you think you're the only one who does that? Of course not. Meaning that everybody's doing that. There's a routine that's there. You ever stop and think that all the time that you've been doing this, the past few years, you're driving next to the exact same people? Or you're walking next to the exact same people? And we don't even notice it. because we never stop to think about it. But I would bet that if you picked out a car, or actually you probably pick out a few cars, because there are anomalies, but especially if there's a car that stands out, like a green Mustang or something like that, you'll notice that you do see it, frequently. Maybe once or twice a week, maybe once every other week, because you're roughly going down the same place at roughly the same time. You're going to pass each other quite a bit. You're the same group of people going places. But we don't notice it because we go into autopilot. And then all of a sudden something happens to us in the morning that kind of wakes us up, and that's the first thing that we're conscious of. Like a person coming out of a coma, we're suddenly conscious for the first time. And then we're awake for the rest of the day. But think about how much time of your life that amounts to if we do that all the time. And think about how often we do that. On the weekends, whatever. If you go to work and you go into autopilot, if you're driving. I had a friend who worked in Mission Valley and lived out in Hemet, if you know where that is. It's like 100 miles away. And this guy used to make the commute from Hemet to Mission Valley 5 days a week. And I was asking him, what do you do? And he said, I just throw on the radio and just go, and then I kind of like zone out, and all of a sudden I kind of come to when it's my exit. That's like an hour and a half a day that he's doing this. And you multiply that out, that's twice, an hour and a half each way. So that's 3 hours a day. That's 15 hours a week. Multiply that out over the course of a month. Multiply that out over the course of a year. That's a lot of days that he's completely unconscious. And you're losing that aspect of life. And so this ends up happening where we just kind of go into this autopilot. And if you get into that autopilot, this is why, by the way, you'll have old people who will say things like, I've seen it all. You get people who think that they know everything. That's why they think they know everything. Because they're seeing the world in this stereotyped way that conforms to their beliefs because they only see what they believe. They don't see the things that are outside of that. They see the bush, and they assume that that bush has not changed in the past 27 years. It changes every minute of every day in some way. Now, not all the changes are worth noticing. A little leaf changes here, one gets a little bit yellower there, whatever. Not all those changes are worth seeing. But think of that as a metaphor for a lot of the things in our lives. That we see them, we don't notice the change in them. And then suddenly we wake up one day and the bush is gone and we're like, I wonder what happened. The sad, and it's probably one of those scary things about being a parent, I imagine, is that one day your parents went to sleep and then you walked past them as a toddler, and then they probably rubbed their eyes, opened them up, and suddenly you're 18. And they're like, wait, what the hell just happened? It seemed like it was just a few minutes that went by. And in a certain sense, it kind of was. Because there was so much autopilot going on there. And if you were to ask your parent, like, remember that time we went to the park, and they might be like, no, I don't remember. But damn, they probably wish they did. Because those opportunities for those moments, those opportunities for those memories are now past. You can't go back and relive them. It's one of those tragedies of life. That life has to be lived forward. But it can only be understood backwards. It isn't until those moments are past that you suddenly sit there and can say, like earnestly, but like genuinely with your heart, and not just academically, but to genuinely, earnestly say, wow, I wish I could relive that moment because the opportunities for those great things are gone. That doesn't mean that the opportunity for all great things are gone. In other words, there's still a lot of life left for you in them, hopefully, God willing. And then you can go forward and create these new memories. But those past ones, they're gone. They're past. And so the more that we can kind of delay this part of life, especially this last part of life here, sometimes you can kind of live. You can live springtime in your winter. Sometimes you can live some summer in your winter. And you guys have those really crazy grandparents. You just do off-the-wall stuff. I have this neighbor, Carlos. And Carlos has got to be in his 70s now. And I've gotten in so much trouble with this guy. Because he comes over to my house and he's just like, hey, Steven. That's how he talks. I go, what's up, Carlos? He says, hey, you busy? Whenever he asks me that, I go, man, I'm about to get into some shit. We stole a bunch of stuff one time. I didn't mean to. He did. I didn't. I didn't know we were stealing it. He just asked if we could take my truck to go get some stuff. I said, sure. Ended up stealing some stuff and had to run away from the guy who was chasing us to get his stuff back. He thought that was hilarious. We stole we got into a fight, I guess, with a beehive. because he wanted fresh honey. I didn't know I was getting into that until the bees started swarming. But he's a guy who kind of seems to live a bit down here, but things have slowed down the past 2 or 3 years, and I worry about him, because as soon as that summer stops reflecting in us, and of course winter just gets cold and everything slows down. So this is what the Mayans understand. This is what a lot of cultures understand. We understand it as birth, life, and death. They see it as kind of this transition among all of these different seasons. You know, it might not be a bad way to see it, because when you understand it that way, you can appreciate where you are, and you can maybe throw on the brakes to where you're going. And maybe we can delay this a bit more. Maybe we can delay this a bit more. You can't stop it, man. Eventually, we are right in the West. Things are teleological. There will be an end. But maybe we can steal a few more minutes. Questions? Comments? Thanks.